All right, so thank you so much for joining us today at UC Center Sacramento's Undergraduate Research Showcase. This event is a wonderful way to end each term, highlighting the research that our students have worked on all quarter or semester. We are so proud of their accomplishments. I'd also like to take the time to thank all of our amazing internship host sites and supervisors. Without you, this program would not be possible. And with that, the format for today will be that I will go ahead and call each student by name. They will go ahead and share their screen and their poster presentation. We will then take one question from the audience in terms of either the internship host site or the academic team. Then we'll move on to the next student. We'll have open Q&A at the end of all the presentations. All right, and with that, the person to go ahead and get us started is Jose Cruz Roa, who interned with the UC Student Association.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Jose Cruz Roa, and I'm an undergraduate student at UC Davis with the Department of Political Science. My research question today is whether there is a relationship between policing and low-income communities and an increase in use of force cases. In recent years, there has been an alarming increase in police use of force cases, particularly affecting Black and Latino communities. Previous research has shown that across multiple agencies in California, officers tend to interact with civilians differently. For instance, during traffic stops, CHP has shown to stop both Black and white people equally, while LAPD has shown to detain more Black people than white. Can this be applied to policing in low-income communities is my question. My hypothesis to this is that policing in low-income communities have larger cases of use of force towards Black and Latinos by an officer than in higher-income communities. For my research, I conducted a comparative study between 4 large Bay Area counties. I chose these counties based on their racial and economic diversity. My independent variables are the number of officers per 10,000 Black and Latino residents and the median household income of each county. My dependent variable is the number of use of force cases filed by Black and Latino residents. To determine which counties are considered low or high income, I focused on the Bay Area Equity Atlas. As for the use of force cases, I focused on years 2016 to 2019. Figure 1 shows that the officer population per county, and based on the number of officers we have, we can see that figure 2, the number of officers, as the number of officers begins to increase, so does the number of use of forces and cases per 10,000 Black residents. For the median income level, we can see in figure 3 that there is a correlation between income levels and a percentage of use of force cases filed by Black residents in low income areas. For instance, as the income increases, the number of reports slowly begin to decrease for Black individuals. In conclusion, my hypothesis for whether policing in low income communities will have a higher rate of use of force cases than higher income is partially supported. Black people tend to have higher cases of use of force when they are in low income areas and have higher officer population. As for Latinos, it is the opposite. Some policy suggestions I can make after doing my research include just more revising towards use of force through the implementation of strict guidelines and ensuring consequences for misconduct. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jose, for that great presentation. And if there's a question from UC Student Association, you can go ahead and raise your hand. All right, then if not, over to the academic team. Yes, Dr. Butters.
Thanks, Cindy, and great presentation, Jose. I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit more about your theory and argument. Like what causal mechanism do you think is really going on here? Just go into a little more detail on that.
I think, honestly, there's just a lot going on in terms of like income or like use of force. I feel like there's just some confounding variables that can play a part in this that I feel like next time I could probably just like, I could honestly take into account, and this could include like crime rates. For example, like in San Mateo, you can see that it's clearly an outlier right here in use of force reporting by Black and Latino residents per 10,000 Black and Latino residents. And who knows, maybe San Mateo might have like higher crime rates. And that's why there's more cases there, or honestly, there could be also more like racial profiling as well. But yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jose. Good job.
Great, thank you so much. All right, our next student that we'll be presenting is Laura Calindris, who interned with the California Community College's Student Success Center.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Kalindris, and I am a fourth-year student from the Department of Sociology and Education from the University of California, Los Angeles. So did you know that the community college transfer route is the best place for a lot of students to go to achieve higher education? However, according to the Public Institute in California, when they first enroll to community college and their aim is to transfer, only about 4% of students do so within the first 2 years, 19% in the first 4 years, and about 28% in the next 6 years. But why is that? So my research question is looking at the relationship between transfer counseling services and to the transfer rate to universities. By this, I mean that the more transfer services have at community colleges, the more students more likely to transfer to a university compared to those that may not have that same amount. With this information, we're able to gather insight on the effect of transfer services offered on the transfer rates. For this study in particular, I conducted a comparative study. So my independent variables was the number of transfer and counseling services available at community colleges, with a dependent variable being the transfer rate of universities. For the measurement of the variables, I was able to analyze about 15 CCs or community colleges from Los Angeles microregion, gathering the data on these community colleges. I was able to look at the student success metrics from the California Community College information database and look at specifically a 2-year cohort transfer rate starting from the 2018-2019 entering class. From there, I looked at each of the CC websites selected to look at the transfer services offered. And according to my own research that I found, and I'm going to put my screen a little bit up here so you can see, was that there wasn't a really strong correlation between both the transfer services and the transfer rates in that year. If anything, it actually presented a really flat and weak relationship. In figure 4, it indicates that a lot of the transfer rates were actually under a lot of 15% of it. While it seems really low compared to previous years, it's actually pretty high since they were a lot lower in previous years. And there's a lot of other mechanisms involved with transfer rates, but just for the purpose of this research, my focus was just on the transfer. Conclusions coming into this presentation and these findings, it just looking at the 15 and low percent, it says that maybe not having a lot of transfer services at community colleges doesn't really mean that you'll have a higher transfer rate. A lot of things going into future research findings is that maybe findings can look at whether the quality of those transfer student services actually help better for transfer rates rather than just having more of said transfer rates. The future research also explore the details between the programs, looking at the different numbers and years that it was created to affect the transfer rates. And one of the conclusions I also found was that they can reevaluate all the transfer services at the CC, since every CC is different, and serve the student population to help them transfer out to four-year universities. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Laura, for that presentation. And if there is a question from the internship host site. All right, Sarah. Oh, there.
Sorry, I'm in my car right now. Parked, not driving. But anyways, thank you so much, Laura, for that. I was just curious, given this is the time frame of this project, how do you think COVID might have impacted your results?
So COVID was actually one of the things I was really worried about, because a lot of students are remote. So a lot of the services might have been either closed or they would have been online and might not have served a lot of students. But looking at the data, it actually increased compared to pre-COVID times. So it really takes into the question, is it just the student services that are being offered? Is it something a lot more indicating the transfer services, or is it the quality of education that they're receiving during that time, during COVID? So it really expands into not only looking at the programs and the quality being offered, but what other things are the colleges doing to help students transfer, such as teachers and helping their students in their classrooms and being supportive on that. I wish I had more time to be able to dig deep into that, but that's one of the things that really stood out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. All right. So our next student that will be presenting is Angelique Kaiser, who interned with the California Department of Education Legislative Affairs.
Hi, my name is Angelique Kaiser. I'm a third-year student with the Department of Politics at UC Santa Cruz. My project reviews the efficacy of universal school meal programs in the state of California. Initially, the USDA's community eligibility provision provided free meals to public schools with a 40% or higher identified student population, meaning that 40% of their students were low income, considered at risk, or even foster youth. And currently in California, AB 130 allows for every public school in California to provide 2 free meals to every student, regardless of their socioeconomic status. My project asked the question, did participation in the community eligibility provision affect students' chronic absenteeism rates, their standardized test scores, and their academic motivation? I hypothesized that compared to school districts without the provision, districts with any level of participation in CEP will see lower chronic absenteeism rates, higher ELA and math scores on their California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, and more positive survey responses regarding academic motivation in the California Healthy Kids Survey. For this project, I categorized 26 unified school districts into 3 categories based on their participation in CEP for the 2018 and 2019 school year, these categories being no participation, half participation, and full participation. I collected chronic absenteeism rates from the Department of Education, CASP and CHKS results from their respective data dashboards online. And unfortunately, my findings did not support my hypotheses and actually showed opposite trends regarding CEP participation and my dependent variables. So chronic absenteeism rates were higher in districts halfway utilizing the program and lowest in districts not utilizing CEP at all. And students in CEP school districts met CASP testing scores less than in districts that did not utilize the program, and students in districts with the without participation in CEP agreed more strongly that they were more motivated to succeed in school compared to students without the provision. And because this project is only based on 1 school year, it's not going to capture the full efficacy of a program. If I had more time, I'd love to compare everything over a set of years, and starting now until the program ends. And thank you for listening.
Great, thank you so much, Angelique. And if there's a question from the internship host site. And then if not, over to our academic team. All right, Dr. Butters.
Thanks, Cindy, and thanks, Angelique, for a nice presentation there. I was wondering if you could just tell us a little more about your hypotheses and how you think your independent variables related to each of your outcomes. Because there are 3 kind of similar outcomes, but I'm wondering, especially as it relates to motivation, even though you didn't find any relationship there, why you thought initially that your independent variable would be related to your dependent variables. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So in my mind, I was thinking that if students are no longer worried about where their next meal is coming from, so these students are getting breakfast and lunch every day, their parents aren't worried about when am I going to pack my kid for lunch, for snack. So the parents have more opportunity to take care of their kids in other ways rather than financially and with school lunches. And also I feel like everyone knows the feeling of being hungry in class and like going crazy because all you can think about is the food. So if students are no longer worried about where their food is coming from, they have more opportunity to study in class, meaning higher test scores. They're more willing to show up to class because they know they're going to get that food, so lower chronic absenteeism rates. And I chose the survey responses just because I wanted to see if having a free meal every day changed academic motivation. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Thank you so much. All right, so our next student that will be presenting is Kayla Garcia Pibdani, who interned with Catalyst California.
Hi, my name is Kayla Garcia Pibdani. I'm with the Department of Political Science here at UC Davis, and I was focusing more on my research examined the school to prison pipeline. More than 11,000 children were arrested on elementary and middle school campuses nationwide during 2017 to 2018, with more than 79,000 referrals to law enforcement. In California, K-12 campuses utilize law enforcement as mediators of conflict, transitioning their role into an additional disciplinary tool on campus. In my report, I evaluated whether or not zero tolerance policies and law enforcement present on campus affected retention rate, and did it target and disproportionately affect students of color and students with disabilities. My hypothesis says yes, it does. It did disproportionately affect students of color and students with disabilities. To study this question, I examined the 4 largest districts in California: San Diego, Long Beach, Fresno, and Los Angeles Unified. My independent variables of zero tolerance policy disciplines were in and out of school suspensions, referrals to law enforcement, and dropout rates, which were compared amongst all districts. Within my findings, I found that while the Black population remained under 13% amongst all districts, Black students were at least 2 times more likely to receive out-of-school suspensions compared to their white counterparts. In Los Angeles Unified, they had the largest ratio, with Black students being 6.36 times more likely to receive an out-of-school suspension compared to their white counterparts. Physical restraint is a form of disciplinary action towards students. Students with disabilities, however, are far more likely to receive this discipline. With the exception of Long Beach Unified, in 2017, over 94% of physical restraints were utilized towards students with disabilities. Los Angeles Unified had 154 cases of physical restraint, all of which were used towards students with disabilities. Based on the number of in and out of school suspensions and dropout rates, we cannot conclude a relationship between zero tolerance policies and retention rates definitively, but we can see a disproportionate rate of disciplinary outcomes for students of color and students with disabilities. For further research, there needs to be an examination of the number of school resources offered for students with disabilities, as well as number of school psychologists on campus, number of law enforcement officers, as well as looking at a larger data pool to understand how this is affecting students in the state of California. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kayla, for that great presentation. And so if there is a question from the internship host site. Right, Catalyst, California.
Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sedalia King. I'm the Associate Director of Government Relations with Catalyst, California. Thank you so much for letting us host Kayla. She's been a dream. So Kayla, I wanted to ask if there's any other variables you wanted to consider through this research, whether it's income, anything else, just curious.
Yes, something that I wish I had more time to examine, but just wasn't feasible during the 10-week course, is looking at how socioeconomic status also affects these issues, understanding how these certain districts have larger populations of students of color, and how that may affect also the amount of resources that are available on campus, specifically with looking for students with disabilities, for example, as well as whether or not these officers are trained to deal with students, and looking into how these quote unquote resource officers or law enforcement on campuses are trained, what qualifications that they need to be met in order to operate on a school campus, and so forth. I feel like this is barely scratching the surface of a very complex issue, but yeah, those are some examples of things that I would like to further look into. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And our next student that will be presenting is Sujay Salinas, who interned with the Santa Maria Law Firm.
Good morning. My name is Sujay Salinas, and I'm from the Department of
Oh,
Sociology.
Sujay, we actually, sorry, we only could see part of it. The bottom part's cut off.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's perfect. Great, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sujay Salinas. I'm from the Department of Sociology at UC Davis, and today I will be expanding a little bit more about juvenile schools in California. It has been shown that in California, there's not a lot of resources available for juvenile schools. 254 juvenile schools have been established, but only 52 of them have been active throughout California. And based off research from the year 2021-2022 that I've been researched on, it has shown that those schools have substantially lower levels of graduation rates than non-juvenile schools in California. And so that is why providing services that can help students attain better support is crucial, because Increasing graduation rates also expand better opportunities for success, employment, and higher education. That is why my question focuses on what is the relationship between school services and graduation rates for juvenile delinquents that lack prioritized education. And my hypothesis was centered on juvenile schools with more supportive services would show higher levels of graduation rates and lower dropout rates. The null hypothesis shows that's opposite of that. So there could be or not a relationship between services and graduation rates. For my research methodology, I analyzed 10 different juvenile schools from California. I measured them based off services provided, such as IEP, parent involvement, mental health services. I did collect graduation rates and dropout rate outcomes from each of these schools between the school year 2021 and 22. And from the school's research, the average graduation was 36.6%. And I did create a service evaluation that analyzed juvenile school services to determine whether services do help increase graduation rates. The results did show that there was a weak relationship in that. There was no positive relationship seen, but there was a relationship between schools with services that are more than 6 did show that they have higher graduation rates compared to schools that have less than 6. One interesting thing that I found was that schools with higher dropout rates did have lower graduation rates. So in conclusion, there's no big relationship between services and graduation rates. And this shows that juvenile schools should be prioritizing services that are more supportive and individual, and that way they can help decrease dropout rates. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Say, for that great presentation. And if we have a question from the internship host site. All right, and if not, over to the academic team. All right, Dr. Quila.
Hi, Stuart. Hi, Stuart. Thank you so much for your presentation. I was wondering if you could just go a little more in depth into the types of services you looked at for each of these schools.
Yeah, so for the services, since there was a lot of services and it was too much to put into, of course, the graph, I did put them in specific categories. For mental health, I did put their counselors available. Are there specific behavioral and emotional programs, services available? For special education, is there IEP individualized programs provided? College and career, are there vocational training? Are there any career counselors provided? Financial support, scholarship-based, do they provide scholarships for further post-secondary education? Parent involvement, like do they allow parents to come and help students? Transition support, individual support more based on tutoring? Do they have special individual assignments per student to help them with their weaknesses to become strengths? And professional development, just kind of more so, do they offer educational services that can help them develop their technical and soft skills?
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much. And our next student that will be presenting is Clarissa Frias, who interned with the Institute for Local Government.
Good morning. My name is Clarissa Frias. I'm with the Department of Economics at UC Davis. So 1/3 of California's labor force is made up of middle skill occupations, according to the Public Policy Institute of California. But with a labor force that seems to value higher educated workers, how should California support these middle skill workers? So for my research question, I'm asking if strong state support for career pathway programs is associated with better career outcomes. So career pathway programs, to define it, are a strategy for workforce development to help individuals earn credentials through education and training that can be implemented anywhere from the secondary to post-secondary education level, but does not surpass a bachelor's degree. So my hypothesis is that stronger state support, which I look at through whether or not the state is increasing funding for these programs through policy, is that associated with better career outcomes. So I created an index for my dependent variable of better career outcomes. And I looked at the wages and employment a year after the policy was created, and also accounted for diversity of where the funding was going to in terms of different sectors, as well as different levels of education. So I looked into 4 states, 2 with similar policies and 2 without. So overall, my results show that there's no conclusive association between state funding on career pathway or career outcomes. California did have a slightly higher index result than New York, which I was comparing it to. But Florida and Texas had the same index result. I also found that California and New York also lack in diversity in terms of where the funding is going to in the different levels of education. And Texas and Florida did seem to do well on equally funding all levels. So research implications include the need for diversifying funding between regions, levels of education, and sectors that provide wage and employment growth opportunities, as well as the need for greater collaboration between pathway programs to build networks and partnerships to help the chances of individuals participating in these programs getting successful careers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Clarissa, for a great presentation. If there is a question from the internship host site. And then if not, over to our academic team. All right, Paige Pelton.
Thank you so much, Clarissa. I had a question about if you could tell us more about what middle skill jobs are, and walk us through figure 4 and why some of those industries are more or less sort of adjusted for career pathway programs.
Yeah, great question. So my definition of middle school individuals are those who have less education than a bachelor's degree, but who have earned a higher education level than a high school diploma. So that's my definition. So figure 4, this is looking at the California policy that was called California Career Pathway Trust that was passed in 2013. So this looks at the different sectors. And as you can see, sectors such as like health science, businesses, they seem to have more pathways. And I see that as a way for, sorry about the background noise. I see that as them wanting to support sectors they see as growing more, that they see as like higher employment and wage growth. And sectors such as transportation and education, they did not support as much, but I see that as an opportunity to diversify these kind of sectors. And yeah.
Great, thank you so much. And our next student that will be presenting today is Jason Rich, who interned with the California Fair Political Practices Commission, or FPPC. No, you need, Jason, you need to press the one that's next to that one, the one on the far right.
Is my presentation visible now?
It is, but it's not in full screen. So if you go to the bottom right corner and yep, the last one, press that one. There we go.
Apologize for the technical issues. All right. Hello, my name is Jason Rich. I am from the Department of Political Science at UC Davis. According to 538, over the last 20 years, the House candidate with the largest campaign spending has won their election over 90% of the time. Given this reality and the rapid increase in interest group campaign spending that occurred after Citizens United, I was interested to see how influential interest group spending was at the state level. To test this, I came up with the following question. Do interest group lobbying funds or public support better predict state spending on public health care? My hypothesis was that health interest group lobbyist spending would have a negative relationship with state public health care spending, as public health care is an existential threat to their industry, and that this relationship would be of greater magnitude than that between public support for state healthcare spending and amounts spent. My analysis included 20 states of varying size and partisanship. To measure public support, I collected data from 61,000 responses from the 2020 cooperative election study related to support for state healthcare spending and calculated percent of support for each state. Data on healthcare lobbyist spending was found through the 538 database not proprietary, was found through the Open Secrets database, Follow the Money, and standardized by dividing the number of legislators in each state. Per capita state healthcare spending was taken from the Health Policy Research Center at SHADAC. For my analysis, I created scatter plots of both my independent variables relationship with per capita state healthcare spending and created trend lines for each. My results did not support my hypothesis with health lobbyist spending showing a positive relationship with state health spending per capita and no definitive relationship between public support and state spending. While my hypothesis was not supported, no definitive relationships between variables could be established. Further research in this area should account for potential confounding variables such as poverty levels in each state and the population age distribution, and per capita state spending on healthcare may not be the best metric for determining majoritarian and interest group influences on healthcare policy. Thanks.
All right, thanks so much, Jason. And if there's a question from the internship host side. All right, Paige.
Thank you for this, Jason. I was hoping that you could elaborate on the fact that per capita state spending on healthcare might not be the best metric that you would like to use for your dependent variable. So if you had more time or sort of or money to study this question, what would you replace that dependent variable with?
Right. Part of the problem with per capita state healthcare spending is that if it's set up in a Medicare and Medicaid style program, where it's dependent on levels of poverty and the amount of seniors in each state, that can be higher or lower regardless of level of influence from the healthcare lobby present in each state. And so with greater time and greater funds, I would probably replace it with the percentage of healthcare spending expansion bills that were successful in each state's legislature, and use that as sort of my Y variable instead, as that can be much more indicative of the direct results of lobbyist spending.
All right, thank you so much. And our next student that will be presenting today is Uma Ganeshan, who interned with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, looks great, Uma. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Good morning. My name is Uma Ganeshan, and I'm with the Department of Psychology at the University of California, Riverside. And for my research question, I looked at the public opinion of Californians on the effectiveness of providing mental health services to incarcerated juveniles on reducing recidivism. So around 66% of the incarcerated youth population currently has one diagnosable mental health problem compared to the estimated 15% of the general youth population. And according to my research, public opinion has showed that the public wants a shift more towards rehabilitative care for juveniles. So for my research, I hypothesized that income level would negatively relate to opinion on the effectiveness of mental health services, and that parental status and interactions with the justice system would positively relate to opinion on effectiveness. For my research design, I used an MTurk survey to gather data on 169 California adults. And the survey contained a variety of questions on demographics to gather data from my independent variables and ask questions about the opinion on mental health services and providing them to incarcerated juveniles to gather data from my dependent variables. So my independent variables, I looked at a variety of factors, but the three main ones that I focused on were parental status, income level, and interactions with the Justice Department. And for my dependent variable, I looked at opinion on the effectiveness of providing the mental health services and reducing recidivism. My findings showed that of the three main factors that I tested, only parental status had a statistically significant relationship, with the trend being having more children tends to lead to a more positive opinion on the effectiveness. And my implications overall support the study about public opinion leaning more towards rehabilitation, with mental health care being effective in reducing recidivism.
All right, great. Thank you so much for that great presentation, Uma. And then if there is a question from the internship website. All right, and then if not, over to you, Dr. Pila.
Hi, Uma. Thank you for your presentation today. I was just wondering if you could go into a little more about why you think income will be negatively related to beliefs about effectiveness of mental health services on recidivism.
Well, my thought was, going into this when I was coming up with it, my thought was that a lot of the services that are provided come from government funding, and the government gets money through taxes, and the people who are most affected by taxes are the people who make more money. So my thought process was that people who make more money would be less inclined to think they're effective, simply because they don't want to pay more taxes to go towards supporting the services.
Great, thank you.
All right, great, thank you. So our next student that will be presenting today is Desmond Colley, who interned with the California Energy Commission Renewable Energy Division.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Desmond Colley. I am a student at the Department of Environmental Science and Policy at UC Davis. How much water does everyone use? And do people even care? Over the last 10 years, the state of California has been in considerable drought. And as of March 2022, Governor Newsom called for a voluntary 15% water reduction across the state. While coastal cities have met this, the Central Valley has not. And so my research question is, what is the relationship between affluence or wealth and residential water use in Sacramento County? I'm looking at this because I'm trying to understand what happens between when individual families move from the suburbs, to the suburbs out of cities, and how that contributes to higher water use. My hypothesis is that with the attainment of more money and people moving up in their jobs and having larger families, they desire more space and they move out to the suburbs. So they acquire more capital, that car. Sometimes they want the pool, and that leads to more water use in the end. My data and measurements come from census data across 9 cities in Sacramento County and census designated places, and with the that have corresponding water districts. I look at median household income as well as median home values. And my dependent variable is water utility data, historical over the time period from June 2014 to 2022, and 2014 being when the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act started, and they wanted to know how much water is being used across the state. My findings show that higher water use in Sacramento County is related to higher levels of affluence, and additionally, it's also boosted by the historically low levels of prices in Sacramento County, which is incredible, and it's low compared to the rest of the United States. So I hope you enjoyed my research, and thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Desmond, for that great presentation today. There is a question from the internship website. And if not, over to our academic team. All right, Dr. Butters.
Thanks, Cindy, and thanks, Desmond, for a nice presentation. We've talked about it a number of times, but water districts are weirdly shaped, right? So are cities, but the weird shapes don't really match up super well all the time. So I was just wondering, how are you able to line up water districts with cities or even with CDPs themselves?
Well, water districts, while they do have some spillover, some areas aren't fully represented or piped, for example. Water districts try to get as best as they can to represent the area that they are in. So, for example, in the city of Sacramento, it's a 98 to 99% of the border is represented. But when you move up the hill, into areas like Folsom. Folsom has a huge area, but sometimes there's not a lot of people. Sometimes there's no people living in areas that are like closer to the lake, for example, or south of the river. And it's not necessary for water to be piped to that area, which, it would be like a open land. So while there are some discrepancies in the coverage, the water districts give water to the people, and they have the data on that regardless. So
Awesome. Thanks very much, Desmond.
thank you.
All right, great. And then our next student that will be presenting today is Yu Yang Chen, who interned with the California Asian Pacific Chamber of Commerce.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, looks great. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Yang Chen. Today I will share my research on the impact of foreign farm workers on agricultural productivity in California. As you know, agriculture is critical to California's economy, contributing over $15 billion every year. The role of foreign farm worker is important in sustaining this production. 73% of all farm workers in California in 2020 were foreign-born, and they undertake most labor-intensive tasks. My hypothesis is greater population of foreign farm workers increases yard of labor-intensive crops. The study includes data from 8 Californian counties with the highest agricultural immigrations from 2015 to 2020. I measured the foreign farm worker population by approved H-2A visas and agricultural productivity by yard shifts of labor-intensive crops, such as lettuces, strawberries, and wine grapes. In Figure 1, it shows percentage of foreign farm workers in total agricultural employment across years. And Figure 2 demonstrates crop yard fluctuations annually. Please look at Figure 3. It shows the data distribution. My regression analysis supports my hypothesis. There is a statistically significant positive relation between foreign farm worker population changes and crop yard changes, with a p-value of 0.043. In conclusion, my research suggests an increase in foreign farm workers leads to increased yards of labor-intensive crops in counties with higher foreign labor percentages. Therefore, for policy recommendations, facilitating the H-2A visa application process and expanding legislation to clarify foreign farm workers' labor status can be a good way to avoid potential labor shortages and promote development of agricultural industry in California. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Yang, for that great presentation. And if there is a question from the internship host site. And then if not, over to our academic team, Dr. Quila.
Hi, Yang. Thank you so much for the presentation. I had a question about Figure 1. So if we looked at Figure 1, it shows Imperial County, and you see a couple times where the number of Imperial County goes over 100%. What exactly does that mean? How do you get over 100% in this figure?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Quila. Yes, I also noticed that, but due to the time limit, I didn't explain this. So Imperial County has more farm workers than the local labor demand in 2019 and 2020. I believe it is caused by the way DHS collect the H-2A visa data, because their statistics are the record of number of visas approved for each companies. And my data of the number of foreign farm workers is based on this. So I count the number in different counties with the name of their companies, but the companies may send the labors to other counties in other areas. So yeah, so this may result in overemployment, because these companies not let the laborers work in the county they restricted in.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much. And so our next student that will be presenting today is Farah Zabuida, who interned with the Office of Sacramento City Mayor Daryl Steinberg. Hey, Ferris, you're muted, and we don't see your presentation, so. All right, we see your presentation, Ferris. You're still muted, though.
Sorry about that. Is it good to go? Or?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay. Sorry about that. Just a little sick at the moment. Hi, my name is Ferris Apoeta. I am from the University of California, Davis, and I am also in the Department of Letters and Sciences. Black Americans comprise of 26% of the homeless rate, while only being 5% of the population in California. This likely means that there are unique circumstances that disproportionately affect the African American community over other racial groups that have proportionate populations for homelessness and overall. Due to a concern with policing over the last few years, my research questioned how impactful arrest records are to Black Americans. I hypothesized that as arrest rates increased for Black Americans, homelessness for Black Americans also rose. The theory is that if Black Americans are overrepresented in incarceration rates, then they are more likely to hold more criminal records, and employers would deny them at a higher rate, cutting them all off from gathering income to afford housing. To test this, I simulated a cross-sectional analysis for over 40 counties of California from 2019 to 2021, gathering arrest disposition records from the California DOJ and also homeless estimates from community care centers. I found that as a result of over-policing, arrest rates in California disproportionately affect African-American rates for felonies, with Sacramento being one of the highest to arrest African-Americans over others per capita basis. And when I compared the two with felony arrests and homeless rates, I have found a moderate correlation of 0.32, suggesting that as Black Americans get arrested, homeless rates for Black Americans also rise. So for my implications, I asked another research question, essentially, asking what strategies could be implemented that would align Black American arrest rates to their proportions. I also found that as a result of that, there may be more research to be done as a result of other variables such as median household income, current unemployment rates. And if I had more time, I would have also been able to confound other variables such as repeat offenders and those who got their convictions expunged due to wrongful conviction. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Ferris. And if there's a question from the internship host site. And then if not, over to our academic team. All right, Dr. Butters.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Ferris, for that nice presentation. I just was hoping you could tell us a little more about how you ended up selecting the counties that you did and why you ended up with 40 counties. Was there missing data? Was there a lack of population in certain areas that you couldn't examine them? If so, how might that influence the analysis that you did?
Certainly. One of the biggest issues I had was the way how the DOJ counted based on county for their records on arrest rates versus community care centers. Whereas the DOJ counted each single county individually, all 58 of them. For some measurements for the COCs, they grouped a bunch of counties, which altered the numbers as otherwise I would be comparing arrest rates for one county over the homeless rates for several. So to make it less complicated, I got rid of all those counties. And another issue was also that some counties were also just way too small to make a meaningful difference, which just so happened to be what every county that has also been gathered up as a result of the COC. So that's I also omitted misdemeanors, as misdemeanors tend to be much easier to expunge despite correct convictions rather than felonies. And so I figured that felonies were much more accurate to be able to analyze whether or not there's a connection between arrest rates and homelessness.
All right, good answer. Thanks, Ferris.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And so our next student that will be presenting today is Isaac Gabriel, who interned with the Office of Sacramento City Council member Katie Maple.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, great. Thank you, Isaac.
No worries. Morning, everyone. My name is Isaac Gabriel, and I'm a fourth-year UC Riverside student from the School of Public Policy. As a spring 2023 UCCS student, I'll be discussing my research project Reform throughout the class, which aims to ask just how strong is the relationship between homelessness and housing, specifically among those of lower income communities. In California alone, 2023 estimates from a research performed by the Public Policy Institute of California state that the homelessness population can be above 150,000 individuals on any given night in California. Current legislative efforts in California to aim to directly tackle these issues through homelessness funds, affordable housing programs, and transitionary housing programs, as well as temporary housing. My hypothesis in this research project was that there would be a strong relationship between low housing availability, and overall just between homelessness itself, and that my data would implicate that lower income communities are more susceptible to this issue when compared to any other income group as well. I aim to better visualize this issue after conducting a large and quantitative-based research study over the course of 5 major California cities, all while gathering data from point-in-time homelessness surveys, citywide and statewide, citywide housing directories, the U.S. Census data, U.S. Census Bureau data, and other various housing directories from the years 2020 to 2022. Some key variables used in my project include total population count, total housing inventory count, low-income population, median income for citywide median income, and the total amount of homelessness in each individual city as well. After gathering and analyzing the data, I created figures 2, 3, and 4 as seen in my research poster to paint keynotes to be derived from my research. And so into my implications or findings. My implications they show that homelessness has been fluctuating for the past 3 years from 2020 to 2022 in each city at a surprisingly lower rate, despite the presence of COVID-19 during 2020 and 2021 when it was in its highest peak. What can also be seen is that the median cost of housing has been steadily increasing for each city as well, at a slightly faster rate than the median income has been rising. The results in research from each statistic figure and measure seem to imply that not enough is being done to combat the slow rate of in which the average city median income is rising, which leaves further implications for the severity and to the ratio of homelessness and low-income population as seen in figure 4. The housing crisis continues to have a negative impact on homelessness, and data implications suggest that it's possible for those in lower income communities, households to experience homelessness at a faster rate than others. So in the end, my implications state a neutral or a little bit above average correlation to what my hypothesis was, which was I was hypothesizing a strong correlation. But in the end, to efficiently address the issue at hand, city, county, state, and federal governments must come together to tackle this issue from various angles. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Isaac, for that great presentation. And we do have a question from our internship host site. So City of Sacramento, Councilmember Katie Maple.
Hi. First of all, thank you. It's been a joy having you in our office. My question is related to, are there other data points or types of data that you think would have been important to include, or that you might want to include if you were to continue further down the path?
Okay, thank you, Councilmember, for the question. It's nice having you here. Yeah, so I actually thought about this when kind of asking my research question. So I knew I wanted to go into lower income communities. And another kind of factor I was also deciding about implementing in my project, which was kind of due to a time constraint, which I couldn't involve it. But I wanted to look more, if I had the opportunity to, I wanted to look more into communities of color, look into specific which ethnicity, which race among those lower income communities have a higher chance or are more likely to fall into homelessness. But that I say overall, that's probably the factor I would like to implement if I were to have more time. And yeah, thank you for the question.
Great, thank you so much. And so our next student that will be presenting today is Joey Pan, who interned with the Office of Sacramento City Council member Eric Guerra.
Can you guys see my screen?
Now we can. Great, thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Joey Pan from UC Davis. On average, 120 Americans are killed by guns daily. And this begs the question, what is the relationship between open carry handgun laws in the United States and the gun mortality rate due to handgun discharges, including instances of intentional self-harm? So past research suggests that shall issue concealed carry gun laws can increase firearm mortality rate. And I hypothesize that an increase in the level of strictness for concealed open carry handgun laws will be associated with a decrease in the handgun mortality rate. And I analyzed 47 states over a 5-year period from 2015 to 2019. And my independent variable is the strictness level of open carry handgun laws in the United States. And my dependent variable is the handgun mortality rate due to handgun discharge, excluding instances of intentional self-harm. So my control variables are the number of hunting licenses issued per state and the employment rate per state. As you can see in figure 2, 24 states have no laws and 19 states have permissive laws and 4 states have restrictive laws. So after interpreting my regression results demonstrated in table 1, there's no statistically discernible correlation between my independent variable and dependent variable. There is a positive correlation between the number of hunting licenses issued per state and the handgun mortality rate, but the p-value of 0.022 indicates a statistically suggestive relationship. However, when looking at the bivariate relationship between my IV and DV in figure 3, states that have open carry handgun laws are associated with a decrease in average handgun mortality rate. So here are some suggestions and implications for future research. There are a lot more factors that can affect the handgun mortality rate, and a time series analysis can improve the accuracy of the results. And more related control variables like the percentage of Republican voters per state and independent variables like concealed carry gun laws and other categories of gun laws can be added to the statistical model. And future research should also consider other outcome variables like injuries due to guns. Sorry.
Great, thank you so much, Jay, for the great presentation. If there's a question from the internship host site. And then if not, over to our academic team. All right, Dr. Quillen.
Hi, Joey. Thank you for your presentation. I had a question about figure 3, sorry.
Yes.
In figure 3 for the group of with permissive laws, there appears to be a real high outlier out there. I was just curious as to what that outlier was and why that might be.
Yeah, the outlier is Virginia, and I haven't looked into why that Virginia has a significant higher handgun mortality rate, but I would speculate it's because the population size, but I'm not sure. So there are a lot of factors that can go into that, and that could be an independent research by itself. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. And then our next student that we're presenting today is Zane Patel, who interned with the Office of Sacramento City Council member Rick Jennings.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, looks great, thank you.
Awesome. Hi. Hi, my name is Zain Patel. I'm a second-year UC Davis student, and today I'll be discussing how youth development programs can save America's outcasts. Every year in California, thousands of young adults are arrested and put behind bars, and thousands of these youth's lives are ruined before they reach the age of 25. This is an extreme action, as general scientific consensus is an agreement that a human brain is typically not fully developed until the age of 25. More worrisome, minority groups are often very much overrepresented in these detention centers in proportion to their population. Incarceration also comes at a massive expense to the taxpayers. It costs over $300,000 to incarcerate a juvenile in California for just 1 year. This is money that could be better well spent in investing in programs to prevent these youth from being incarcerated in the first place. This leads to my hypothesis, which is that the greater number of youth development programs, the lower the youth incarceration rate will be. Additionally, the more funding there is made available for programs that already exist, the lower the youth incarceration rate will be as well. For my research, I analyzed 18 California counties in 2020 and compared the number of youth development programs to its incarceration rate in proportion for every 1,000th person. I also observed specific cities' youth development programs funding over time and compared it to youth incarceration rates using data from 2018 to 2021. Through this work, I found a weak negative correlation between the number of youth development programs and youth incarceration rates once I took the outlier, which was San Francisco, out of the data. San Francisco is such a huge anomaly that no other county came close to its youth incarceration rate, and therefore skewed the data so much that it created a positive relationship instead of the weak negative relationship which was present once I took it out of the data set. There was, however, some evidence that illustrates the relationship between increasing overall youth development funding and the consequent decrease in youth incarceration rates. Although encouraging the pattern, I think this pattern should be developed further. If my hypothesis is supported in the future, cities could create youth development departments that consist of community leaders, advocates, as well as youth themselves. These would serve as the central point within the city to go over policy and systemize funding for youth programs. If given more time, I would engage in a comprehensive audit of youth development programs across the state and develop a system in which one can measure the effectiveness of a specific program in decreasing incarceration rates. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for that great presentation. If there's a question from the internship host site. And then if not, over to our academic team. All right, Dr. Butters.
Thanks, Cindy, and thanks for a great presentation, Zane. I've got a question for you about, first of all, I like your title a lot. I think it's a great title. I knew it was your title, but it's nice hearing it again. So I like your title. Second, was the independent variable the way you measured it, the way that you really wanted to measure like the like how good maybe the programs were? Like, is the number of programs a sufficient way to measure, or do you think you maybe find a stronger or weaker relationship if instead of number of programs you were measuring something like the quality of these programs?
Yeah, so if I had more time, I basically would, like I said, make it kind of a more comprehensive view of, I would go into depth of like, this is a youth program that's available in most counties. That was also a problem, that there's a lot of youth development programs that were, just for that specific county or wasn't as widespread. So it's a little hard to measure, the effectiveness. But for statewide youth development programs, there's a couple. And for that, I would, if given more time, I would go more into their like funding and like, recidivism rate and stuff like that.
Great, I think you should do it. So nice job.
Great, thank you so much. And then with that, we're going to go ahead and just stop the recording and move over to general Q&A.